Well, blessed afternoon, friends, folks. Today is October 11th, so let's dive right into Grace by Ted Mercer. Grace Church is what Ted Mercer is a pastor of, an excellent pastor. If you do not have a home church in Anadarko, Oklahoma, I highly suggest you check out Ted. You know, a church is for all faces, of all races, of all human beings. But I'm here to tell you, if you're a skin, if you're indigenous, native like us, man, Ted is a spot for you. Ted got all the flags, and God has captured a lot of our native people at Ted's church. So, if you want a good home church, go over there and check out his TP. It's good atmosphere there. And then, other than that, you also have J.J. Methman over there, Pastor Rudy Tarza, another good one. And Victory, I think it's Victory Church with Tonga Day, man sending on water. That's what it means at Iowa Hall. And Pastor Anthony Williams, good man, First Lady Janelle. But this is the Grace book by Max Lucado. Let's get right into this lesson. Finding good in the bad for October 11th. Wish good for those who harm you. Wish them well and do not curse them. That's Romans 12:14. It would be hard to find someone worse than Judas. Some say he was a good man with the backfire strategy. I don't buy that. The Bible says Judas was a thief. The man was a crook. Somehow he was able to live in the presence of God and experience the miracles of Christ and remain unchanged. Reminds me of today's world. There's more evil on Hindu Lamokon. There is more evil on earth than there is righteousness. But there's always a remnant. But if you were there with the disciples, would you remain unchanged? Would you be like Judas? Keep dipping in there, and he was a treasurer. But Jesus knew what he was doing, and Jesus knew what he was doing the whole time. In the end, he decided he'd rather have money than a friend. Does that not go on today in 2025? Hollywood! So, he sold Jesus for 30 pieces of silver. Judas was a scoundrel, a cheat, and a bum. How could anyone see him any other way? I don't know, but Jesus did. Only inches from the face of his betrayer, Jesus looked at him and said, "Friend, do what you have come to do." What Jesus saw in Judas as worthy of being called a friend, I can't imagine. But I do know that Jesus doesn't lie. And in that moment, he saw something good in a very bad man. He can help us do the same with those who hurt us. Yeah. Are there people who have hurt you? Well, of course. Why does God want you to call them friend? Why does God want you to call them friend? Just like Jesus did with this is a great example. This is like what Jesus did with Judas here. He still called him friend, and he told him, do what you have to. Do what you came to do. He knew that he was going to betray him. He knew he was going to sell him for 30 pieces of silver. And I think this is after he dipped the bread. And he said, the one that dips the bread will be the thief among us. And it was him. But yeah, Jesus still called him friend. And there is no greater love to give one's life for one's friends. Judas still had a chance. He could have repented. But instead he hung himself. He gave up. Why does God want you to call them friend for those that hurt us? Because there is no greater life than to give one's life for one's friends. And because we believe in Jesus, even your enemies will be at peace with you. For our enemies are not the people, but the powers and principalities of the air. The enemies are the demons that cause people to get mad. And we look at each other. Look at yourself in the mirror. Look at yourself when you're mad. Do you look like a demon? You may not have horns and all that, but you're not yourself. You're mad. You want revenge. You want to put your hands on someone. You want to give them these hands. But the only reason you should be putting your hands on someone is to pray for them so they are healed redeemed and restored. That's why I won't answer this like the way that I am. Why does God want you to call them friend? Because a friend, there is no greater love to give one's life for one's friends. And as iron sharpens iron, so a friend sharpens another. Sometimes some come to dull that blade, and you'll have to leave them behind. Simple as that. Bless your iron journey. Know the difference between the wheat and the tares.